Welcome to the Cruciform Checkerpack installation guide, with information about the general setup, the most common Type 3 and Type 4 Checkerpack, and stacking the special shapes Type 6 and 8 in conjunction with Type 4. This is how you start. Step 1. Identify the required pallets. Cruciforms are delivered on pallets. Check the wrap color and the label to identify the various products. Step 2. Check the required equipment. For a smooth installation, you need gloves, a tape measure, a pencil, a spirit level, a metallic ruler, and the set of instructions. Step 3. Check the chamber dimensions and the horizontal level. Measure the width, depth, and diagonals of the chamber. Then check that the working surface is flat and level. Step 4. Prepare the positioning guide. To make the positioning guide, you need a long wooden board and a wooden wedge. Prepare the guide according to the Cruciform type and the Regenerator dimensions. The length of the positioning guide is the chamber width minus 20 mm. Mark the distance between the wall and the first cruciform axis on the positioning guide. Then mark the distance between the first and second cruciform axis. Repeat until the setup is complete. Now you are ready to start the cruciform installation. Option A is the most common Type 3 and Type 4 Checkerpack stacking. Step 1. Assemble the first row. Start with Type 3. Place the first row of cruciforms along the wall, with each cruciform on the central axis of the filler and spacer blocks below. Use the positioning guide for correct placement and spacers to hold the cruciforms in place. Step 2. Trace reference marks. Align the positioning guide with the cruciform wings. Then trace assembly reference marks on each wall. The first mark is the distance between the wall and the first cruciform, plus pitch. The distance between the following marks corresponds to the flue dimensions plus the cruciform thickness. Repeat this pattern until the end of the wall. Step 3. Assemble the cruciform rows 3 by 3. After tracing the reference marks, start with the stacking. Use the positioning guide and the marks to position the cruciforms correctly. Place 2 rows of cruciforms next to each other. Then put another row on top. Assemble the cruciform rows 3 by 3. This helps to keep the cruciforms in place for stability. Step 4. Ensure correct positioning. The tongue and groove interlock system helps you to set up the stacking. Install the cruciforms with the tongue end up and groove down. Even with this system, there is some room for movement. Ensure correct alignment of the cruciforms with the previous layers to avoid significant twist in the further stacking. Keep assembling the rows 3 by 3 until the end of the block. Step 5. For the transition to Type 4, repeat the same pattern as before. Type 4 cruciforms have the same dimensions as Type 3, and the stacking is identical. Follow the same steps as before until the setup is complete. The Type 3 and Type 4 Checkerpack is the most common cruciform stacking, but there are other, more specific cruciform shapes. Option B is the Checkerpack stacking of the special cruciform types 6 and 8. Installation always involves Type 4. Step 1. For the stacking of Type 6, follow the same principle as for Type 3. As they are much larger, extra care is needed. Start with the first row of Type 6 cruciforms. Use cardboard spaces in between. Place each cruciform on the central axis of the filler and spacer blocks below. Align the positioning guide with the cruciform wings. Trace reference marks on the chamber walls by following the same steps as for Type 3. Always place 2 rows of cruciforms on a layer, then another row on top. Use this pattern to assemble the rows 3 by 3 to ensure stability. Continue like this until the end of the block. Step 2. For the transition to Type 4, trace reference marks. Start by placing 2 Type 4 cruciforms. Use cardboard spaces in between. Align the positioning guide and trace the reference marks on the chamber walls. For reference, go to option A, Type 3. Step 3. Assemble 5 additional cruciforms. Assemble 5 cruciforms on the first layer. Several workers are needed to keep the cruciforms in place during this step. Then add 2 cruciforms on the second layer to ensure stability. Step 4. Assemble 4 cruciforms at a time for stability. Extend the stacking by adding 3 cruciforms on the first layer, then add 1 cruciform on the second layer. Repeat this pattern until the rows are complete. Step 5. Assemble the rows 2 by 2. Now add 1 row of cruciforms on the first layer and 1 row on the second layer. Assemble the rows 2 by 2 until the end of the block. Step 6. Proceed by assembling the rows 3 by 3. Now that stability is secured, go back to assembling the rows 3 by 3 until the end of the block. Step 7. For the transition to Type 8, start by tracing reference marks. Use the same pattern as for the transition from Type 6 to Type 4. Start by placing 2 cruciforms on the wall. No spacers are needed for this type. Align the positioning guide, then trace reference marks on the walls, like you did for Type 3. Add 5 cruciforms on the first layer. Then place 2 cruciforms on top to ensure stability. Now extend the stacking. Place 3 more cruciforms on the first layer, then add 1 cruciform on the second layer. Follow this pattern until the rows are complete. Now add 1 row of cruciforms on the first layer and 1 row on the second layer. Continue until the end of the block. If you have any questions, please get in touch with us.